Okay, how do playgrounds work and what's an API? AI systems are super powerful, but you can't just chat with them in plain English like you would a friend. You have to use an interface, right? So a lot of people are using ChatGPT or chat models in order to interface, but you can also use playgrounds and an API. So a playground is a little bit more advanced, as is the API, and Rexy works with an API access into these models from the back end, which is great. So Rexy becomes sort of an interface between you and the LLMs. Okay. API stands for Application Programming Interface. It's a set of rules that lets two applications talk to each other. And that's really all you really need to know, because unless you are programming these things yourself, you won't really have to deal with much of that. And a playground is a place that lets you test out API calls, like in a simple web interface. And I was showing earlier the OpenAI playground where I was showing off my fine-tuned data set. So you've already seen it, and we're going to go to that as well here in a minute. Okay. And that's the perfect time to show you the OpenAI playground, because we're going to look at all of these sliders that are on the right-hand side of the playground, okay? Because they're called hyperparameters and they let you adjust how the AI works. These are the dials you can tweak to change the AI style. We will go to one of those right now. I like playgrounds. They're fun. Here is the link to the OpenAI playground if anybody else wants to go in there and have fun. Boom. I'm going to call it, they keep changing the name. It's now platform.openai.com/playground. They just keep moving it around. You can do other things here in the playground. You can make assistants. You can use the old legacy complete model. Not many people do anymore. Almost everybody is using the chat interface. The chat interface consists of a system message over here on the left-hand side. This system message helps point the AI in the right direction. So you can tell it things like you're an expert in marketing, or you are a New York Times best-selling author of horror fiction, right? And it helps point it in the right direction. You have to think of the data set on the back end being a whole big, we call it a field of stars, right? If you think of the galaxy and all the field of it's huge, right? So you got to point it in the right direction so it knows where to go. Your user message is your prompt, and when you hit submit, you get a response. Okay, but let's look at these sliders here over on the right-hand side. Our first slider is temperature. Now, temperature controls randomness. We also say it controls creativity. When you move the slider down, it becomes less creative. When you move it up, it becomes more creative. 2.0 is super creative. Now, some of the LLMs out there, outside of OpenAI, have a slider that goes only from 0 to 1, right? 1 being like super, super creative for them. When you try to translate what you're doing in OpenAI Playground, you might want to turn the temperature down even more. Okay. Let's look at my slide for this, because it says this controls how random or creative the AI can be, right? If you set the temperature high, it gets super weird and wacky. With a lower temperature, it gets very logical and literal. OpenAI's goes from 0 to 2, and other LLMs tend to be 0 to 1. So let's go ahead and prompt it with two different kinds of two different temperatures and see what the output is like. Okay, so let's start with, I will make my system message, you are an author of horror romance. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. Okay, please give me a plot outline for a horror romance book based in, I'll say, Salem, Massachusetts. I'm impressed that I spelled Massachusetts correctly the first time. Okay, and we're just going to start with that very plain prompt. And we're going to turn the temperature, we're going to leave the temperature at 1. We'll start with temperature at 1 and we'll see what we get. And then we'll turn it down and we'll turn it up, and you can see the difference between all those. And I'm going to leave all of these sliders where they are. I'm not going to change a thing. Okay. I'm going to say, please continue. And I said I wasn't going to turn up any of these sliders, but I'm actually going to turn this all the way up so that we get more of a response. Okay. And yes, I'll turn it down. We'll talk about maximum length here in a second. Okay. So it's going to finish off where it left off. 3 acts. Great. Blood Moon Whispers is a haunting tale of forbidden love intertwining the worlds of horror and romance to explore the depths of passion, sacrifice, and redemption in the legendary town of Salem, Massachusetts. It's a pretty standard outline here. Act 1, 2, 3. We got an introduction, introduce the picturesque town, a dark past, reputation for witchcraft, etc. Haunting dreams is the third thing here. Act 2 picks up where that left off, and we get they unravel a curse together. Danger collides, and unraveling a curse together, sacrifice and redemption. Okay, so nothing too out there, right? I'm going to open up a new window. Okay, once again, we're going to do the same prompt. In a new window. Use my... Okay. I'm going to turn up the maximum length a little bit. Now we had it at 1. We're going to turn it way up to like 1.8. Get it close to 2. And then we're going to ask it to go again. All right, guys, see what happened is that it got super creative and started spitting out weirdness, right? It went from so Olivia Sinclair, it started out fairly normal. A talented Celtic historian specializing in witchcraft decides to visit Salem, Massachusetts for research on her next book. Looking for inspiration, she eagerly immerses herself in history, interviews, enjoys flamboyant locales, and seeks documenting untold narratives of tragic happenings prevalent to brandologically. I don't even know if that's a word. And then starts going off the rails, right? So temperature gets a little wacky and weird when you turn it way up. We're going to ask it to stick to what we've done, be very logical. We're going to turn it down to 0.4. Okay, not bad. This isn't much of an outline per se, right? But it is giving us the points of the story: introduction to Salem, a mysterious encounter, unveiling the curse, forbidden love, battle against evil, haunting trials, sacrifices and redemption, breaking the curse, forever together, epilogue. And it's just 10 points, very logical, very sticking with the story idea. And says, even at the end, provides a general structure for a horror romance set in Salem, Massachusetts. What do we learn here? Is that if you want the AI to stick closely and be very logical to your prompts, you're going to want to turn the temperature down. I've found that when I want any of these LLMs to write something based on a chapter brief that I've given it, I also want to turn down the temperature a little bit so that it sticks to the brief. If I want it to be fantastical and make stuff up, then I turn up the temperature and give it a little bit more of a creative leeway. Okay, so that's temperature. Now, as you see, the next thing that I did was I played with this maximum length here. Now, maximum length is the maximum number of tokens to generate shared between the prompt and the completion. The exact limit varies by model. One thing to know about OpenAI is that it considers your prompt plus the response to be like concatenated, put together for the amount of tokens. So if your prompt is like 200 tokens and your response, you want it to be very short, you're going to want to say your maximum length. Let's say you want your response back from OpenAI to be only like 100 words, right? So you're going to want to turn the maximum length down to 300 because prompt plus response equals maximum length. Okay. So your prompt was 200 words. You wanted to get 100 words back. You make your maximum length 300-ish, and then that will give you a shorter response. If you want longer responses, you're going to have to turn it up. Okay. So understand that when it comes to, let me go to maximum length since that was there, max tokens. It's also called max tokens in some other models. Something to be aware of is the fact that this changes between different models. Danny is raising his hand. Please go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah, and just with what you just said, lowering it down to get the lower response will lowering it down to get the lower response you want. Will it give you a better response than just than not caring how much gives you back?
Okay, so it's hard to say what is better in this case, right? So if you look at the slide that's on the screen right now, a small limit like 50 or 100 will make the AI be very concise in its answer. So if you ask it, what are typical roses that are put in a rose bed, it's probably going to give you only 5 roses, right? And it's not going to describe them all. It's just going to list them all out. But if you give it a larger limit, 1,000, 4,000, stuff like that, it will write a lot more elaborately. It'll probably give more flowers. It'll describe them. It'll run a little bit wild. So it's one of those things where I find that I have to play with maximum length, maximum tokens on a lot of these models, turn it up or turn it down and play with it just to see the kind of responses that I can get back and decide whether I like them or not. So sometimes it does take a few prompts to get it right. Does that answer your question?
It's a more matter of what you're wanting, not a matter of it makes it better. It scales it down for what you're actually wanting.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay. So that's maximum length. It's also called maximum tokens on a couple of LLMs and some of the LLMs, and it's not well documented, I am sorry to say. If you can find documentation for the LLM that you're prompting, you might be able to find this answer. But like on Open, your max tokens is your prompt plus the response put together. But some LLMs, when you set maximum length or maximum tokens, it is literally just the response that you get back. So another thing to play with. And unfortunately, this is not standardized as of yet. We'll see. Maybe someday there will be standards on these things. And everything will be prompt plus response or just response. We'll have to see. But right now, it will require you playing around with it a little bit.